welcome to JazzSmart podcast. My name's James Rawlinson. I'm sat here with Dan Mar-Molinero, who's currently running a Pentatonic workshop for us. This is the first one of the podcasts we're going to run, really talking about what we do on the workshops and what we've got coming up. So I guess the place to start is at the beginning, Dan. I'll ask you, how did you get started in music in the first place?
Well, to cut a very long story short, like most people, I played a bit of music in my school and I really enjoyed it. And I had a couple of very inspirational music teachers, Mr. Hall and Mr. Townsend, and they were really into their jazz, so they gave us loads of jazz to play. And gradually got into that and basically set myself a task of doing lots of jazz playing, met lots of people in the local scene and set up a few bands. One of which was a youth jazz orchestra, and I was running a youth jazz orchestra by the time I was 18, which was probably the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life, given all the paperwork and that I forgot to do mostly. I shouldn't say that on a podcast, really. And it became very successful, which led to other things and other opportunities. Eventually ended up going and studying jazz at the Guildhall School of Music with some awesome people. So that's how I got started. It was very kind of typical.
Who did you study with at the Guildhall?
Well, I had my sax teacher was called Jean Toussaint, who was a jazz messenger, an amazing saxophonist. But I also had a number of other fabulous lecturers there. Scott Stroman, who's just a genius in composition and big band directing. Pete Churchill, who's one of the most wonderful musicians in the country, I think, and an incredible educator. And also a chap called Simon Purcell, who was, at the time, he was our improvisation coach, but he went on to be head of Trinity Jazz course as well. So I was spoilt. And then during the time I was there, we had all sorts of amazing guests come in, like Dave Liebman, who's a sax player who played with Miles Davis, and Dave Liebman actually played one of my charts while I was there. So I'm very excited to say I've got a recording of Dave Liebman playing my tune.
That's quite an achievement.
Yeah.
And so obviously we know you from the work that you're doing at Southampton Uni, which has got a great reputation. Some of my pupils have gone on there, and currently one of my pupils I know is studying with you. What does the course, or what does it entail that you do at Southampton University? How would you sum it up?
So my role at Southampton University, my role is head of jazz, pop and musical theatre performance. So I do a lot of performance stuff for contemporary types of music. And I also do some composition teaching. I teach jazz composition and jazz theory and a bit of commercial composition, things like studio stuff and songwriting, because I also have a bit of a background in doing record producing and things like that. But the course itself is extremely exciting. I would say that because I work there and it's obviously a recruitment tool. But actually, over the last kind of 4 or 5 years, we've made a real change in our curricula to allow us to really model it on what's going on in the real world. So we have obviously fantastic courses in modules in things like classical music, and you can study theory and analytics of classical stuff. You can also look at music history. You can learn about all the kind of standard stuff you'd expect from a university. But on top of that, we now have really exceptional offers in things like producing, and we have a producer who teaches producing. We've got a video game. You can learn how to do video game stuff, and by far away the most fun thing I've done this year is be a second examiner playing a Lego video game, examining. It was the most fun, examining some music. But also, importantly, I think for anyone who's interested in jazz, there's a really big jazz offer, and you can go there and study it seriously. You'll be taken seriously. You can look at jazz and how you can write jazz, perform jazz, and promote jazz. And it's I think for Russell Group University, a top 20 university, it's a really exciting course, and we have amazing students to come out of it. Many of whom I now employ. So to do gigs with me. So they're brilliant musicians.
That's great. And obviously, I should mention you are you primarily a sax player, or I mean, we haven't talked about?
Well, this is interesting, isn't it? Yeah, I think I am. I mean, opinions vary on the bandstand, but I think of myself as an alto sax player. But for many years now, I've done writing as well. So it's an interesting dynamic. I'm sure you recognise this, like keeping your playing up while trying to do other things. Sure. I can play piano, but it generally sounds like I'm using my elbows, so I stay away from that. And I've got grade 1 drums as well. I just want to put that out there. Grade 1 drums.
So obviously you, not obviously, but you've been here for the last 2 days on our JazzSmart, leading our JazzSmart workshop, which has been a pentatonic improvisation workshop.
Yeah.
How would you sum that up? What have you covered over the last 2 days? Because this is the second one we've run of these. The first one sold out straight away, which is why we ran a duplicate workshop. I mean, I've sat in on some of it and been fascinated and learnt a lot myself, even as a teacher. How would you describe what they've covered over the last 48 hours?
Well, the essence of the workshop was to create some sort of framework to allow people to use pentatonics to plug them into different types of music. Ultimately, we've been talking a lot about standard jazz chord changes, but also things like the blues, and we will be covering stuff like funk. The idea of having 5 notes limits you quite considerably, but it also facilitates lots of very cool things. And when you really get into the idea of pentatonics, you can find that not only can they can give you some really modern ideas, but they can be really useful for applying patterns and pattern shapes. And I mean, the examples I've been using have been varying from like piano players like McCoy Tyner, who's like a really cool jazz pianist who played with John Coltrane, kind of very contemporary jazz, to people like Maceo Parker, who's the sax player who played with James Brown, a very funky guy, and loads and loads and loads of pop records. And we've been going through this kind of idea that it's the sound of the pentatonic that really defines a lot of modern music.
Right, fascinating, yeah. And finally, we're trying to take all your time up here this year, because this has been the third time. Hopefully we'll monopolise you. We're thinking hopefully is late 2022, I think. Return of the pop big band.
Yeah.
What any ideas what we'll have in store on that course?
Well, it was great fun. We did this before a few years back now.
Yeah.
Obviously the pandemic aside.
Of course.
And I mean, what was great fun about that was basically we're going to take a load of tunes which can be played. I was thinking almost like a session musician orchestra, but with brass. And the kind of stuff I brought last time ranged from like, I think we did some Michael Jackson stuff. Yeah. We also had a singer come in and sing it with us.
That's right. Yeah,
so we could look into that. But
absolutely, yeah.
Really kind of funky, poppy kind of rhythms, but with that kind of sensibility of horn sections and jazz.
And with a chance to improvise as well.
Of course,
obviously built in. Yeah.
We'll do a bit of that as well. And groove is very important. We'll be looking at funk and groove and really getting our groove on.
Sounds fantastic. Well, thanks a lot. That was Dan Mar-Molinero, as I say, from Southampton Uni, amongst other things. I'm James Rawlinson. Listen out for more podcasts, which will be about the upcoming courses and workshops that we've got running through 2022 and beyond. The next workshop we've got is in Manchester with Andy Scott. More details can be found on our website, jazzsmart.com.